If you close your eyes for a moment and imagine stepping back 600 years, the world around you would feel both strangely familiar and shockingly alien. We are going to travel into the everyday life of the 15th century, an age before electricity, before trains, before the modern conveniences we take for granted. This was the late Middle Ages blending into the dawn of the Renaissance. Great cathedrals towered over cities, castles still loomed on hillsides, and villages spread across a landscape that felt much quieter than our modern world. Yet, the rhythm of daily life was steady and full of small details that shaped the lives of ordinary people. Let's start in a small European village around the year 1450. The village is clustered around a church. The bell in its wooden tower doesn't just mark religious services, it is the heartbeat of the community. There are no clocks in most homes, so the sound of the bell tells people when to work, when to gather, and when to rest. Sunrise and sunset dictate the schedule more than anything else. When dawn breaks, people are already awake. Because every hour of daylight is precious. Homes and living spaces. Most families live in simple timber-framed houses with thatched roofs. Inside, it is smoky from the open hearth. There is no chimney. In the poorest homes, just a hole in the roof where the smoke escapes. Walls are often made of wattle and daub sticks woven together and smeared with a mixture of mud, straw, and sometimes animal dung. Floors are packed earth, covered in straw or rushes to absorb dirt. Furniture is minimal: a wooden bench, a table, a chest for storing clothing. Beds are shared, sometimes by the entire family. Mattresses are sacks stuffed with straw or hay. The colder months, people sleep huddled together for warmth, often with animals nearby. Chickens, goats, or even a pig might share the same room. There is no running water. Families fetch water from a village well or nearby stream, carried in wooden buckets. And since soap is a luxury, people wash rarely compared to modern standards. Bathing, when it happens, is done in wooden tubs filled with heated water, an event that requires effort and planning. Food and meals. The daily diet of ordinary people in the 15th century is simple and repetitive. Bread is the foundation of every meal. Depending on where you are, it could be made of rye, barley, or wheat. Alongside bread, there is porridge, cabbage, onions, peas, and beans. Meat is rare for peasants. It is expensive and often reserved for holidays or special feasts. More often, people eat fish, especially salted or dried fish, because the church requires many days of fasting when meat is forbidden. Beer and ale are common drinks, even for children. Water can be unsafe, so low-alcohol ale is the everyday beverage. Milk is often turned into cheese or butter before it spoils. Wealthier households enjoy spiced dishes, roasted meats, and sweet pastries. But for most people, food is plain and filling rather than flavorful. Meals are eaten from wooden bowls, often shared among family members. Forks are not yet common. People eat with knives, spoons, and their hands. Salt is highly valued, not only for flavor but for preserving food. Clothing and appearance. Clothing reflects a person's status immediately. Peasants wear rough wool or linen tunics, often dyed in dull colors like brown, gray, or green. Shoes are simple leather, though many go barefoot. Women wear long dresses with aprons, and their heads are covered with kerchiefs or simple caps. The wealthy, by contrast, display their rank through rich fabrics like silk, velvet, or fur. Their clothing is bright, decorated with embroidery and jewels. In fact, laws in some regions called sumptuary laws restrict what ordinary people are allowed to wear, ensuring that clothing is a visible marker of class. Work and daily occupations. For peasants, daily life revolves around the agricultural calendar. In spring, the fields are plowed and sown. In summer, people weed and tend the crops. In autumn, there is the great harvest, a time when everyone works from sunrise to sunset. Winter is quieter, spent repairing tools, spinning wool, or mending clothing by the fire. Children are expected to help from a young age. Boys herd animals, gather firewood, or fetch water. Girls help their mothers with cooking, spinning, and caring for younger siblings. Education is rare in villages. Only the children of the wealthy or those chosen for church service learn to read and write. For most, knowledge is passed down orally. Craftsmen in towns live differently. The blacksmith, the baker, The weaver, the shoemaker all work from small workshops, often part of their homes. Guilds regulate these trades, controlling training and quality. An apprentice might begin at age 12, living in the master's household, learning the craft for years before becoming a journeyman. Religion and community life. Religion permeates every aspect of daily life. The church calendar dictates the year of Christmas, Easter, saints' days, feast days, fasting days. Sunday is for worship, and the parish priest is one of the most important figures in the community. People believe deeply in heaven, hell, and purgatory, and they see disease, storms, or famine as punishments from God. Superstitions also thrive. Charms, amulets, and prayers are used to ward off illness or bad luck. Medicine is rudimentary, based on herbs, bloodletting, and theories of humors in the body. Midwives assist in childbirth, and many ailments are treated at home. Festivals bring relief from hard labor. There are fairs with music, dancing, jugglers, and wrestling contests. On certain feast days, people indulge in food, drink, and games. Despite hardship, there is laughter, storytelling, and singing by the fire in the evenings. The shadow of hardship. Life is far from easy. Disease is ever present. The memory of the Black Death, which swept through Europe a century earlier, still haunts communities. Famine can strike when harvests fail. Wars between lords or kingdoms spill over into villages, bringing destruction and fear. The average life expectancy is short. Many children do not survive infancy, and adults rarely live past 50. Yet, people endure. They find joy in small things, the good harvest, a wedding celebration, the birth of a child, the warmth of the hearth. In a world without modern distractions, community bonds are strong. Neighbors help one another, and survival depends on cooperation as much as on individual effort. A glimpse beyond the village. While most people live in rural settings, towns are beginning to grow in the 15th century. Trade is expanding, especially in Italy, Flanders, and along the Baltic coast. Merchants deal in cloth, spices, and salt. Markets buzz with activity, and taverns serve as gathering spots. And in some cities, Florence, Venice, Bruges, something new is stirring: the Renaissance. Artists, scholars, and thinkers are rediscovering classical knowledge, experimenting with new techniques, and changing how people view the world. But for the majority of people, life remains grounded in the same routines their ancestors followed. The 15th century was a world where survival depended on the land, faith guided every decision, and daily life was shaped by tradition and necessity. From smoky huts to bustling town markets, from plowing fields to gathering at church festivals, people lived with simplicity, hardship, and resilience. In the next part, we will step forward into the 17th century, a time of exploration, religious conflict, scientific discovery, and social change, when the daily rhythm of life began to look a little more like the world we recognize today. The 17th century opens a very different chapter in human history. The world is no longer quite as enclosed as it was in the Middle Ages. By now, Europeans have crossed oceans. Colonies are being established in the Americas and Asia, and trade is bringing exotic goods into ports and cities. Science is beginning to challenge old beliefs, with men like Galileo peering through telescopes, and philosophers questioning how society should be governed. But what did all of this mean for the ordinary man or woman living through the 1600s? Let's step into their shoes and explore daily life in this remarkable century. Homes and domestic life in the 17th century. Homes start to look more comfortable compared to the rough huts of the 15th. In towns, middle-class families live in brick or timber houses with multiple rooms, a kitchen, a hall, and upstairs chambers for sleeping. Windows are still small and often made of leaded glass panes, which distort light but keep out the wind. Fireplaces with chimneys are now more common, making homes less smoky than before. Inside, there are wooden chairs with backs instead of just benches. Tables are sturdier, and some families own cupboards to display pewter dishes or imported ceramics. Wealthier homes might even have carpets not on the floor, but hung on the wall or draped over tables as signs of prestige. In rural areas, peasants still live in simpler cottages, though even these often include chimneys and small separate rooms. By the 1600s, domestic animals may still be kept nearby. but the sense of order and division of living space is stronger than in the centuries before. Clothing and appearance. Fashion in the 17th century changes dramatically compared to the medieval tunics and gowns. Men wear breeches, doublets, wide collars, and tall boots. By mid-century, a new style spreads, the three-piece suit, with coat, waistcoat, and breeches, a form that still influences men's clothing today. Hats are nearly universal. From broad-brimmed felt hats to plume creations for the wealthy, women wear bodices, full skirts, and linen shifts beneath. Stiff stays. Early corsets are common among wealthier women, shaping the body according to fashionable ideals. Lace collars, embroidery, and ribbons decorate outfits. Fabrics vary by class. Coarse wool for the poor, fine silks and velvets for the elite. And let's not forget about wigs. Toward the end of the century, powdered wigs become a sign of wealth and sophistication, especially in France under the reign of Louis XIV. Food and dining. The 17th century diet expands thanks to global trade. From the New World come potatoes, maize, tomatoes, chocolate, and tobacco. Though not everyone accepts these foods immediately. Potatoes, for instance, are first met with suspicion before becoming staples in later centuries. Sugar, imported from colonies, becomes increasingly common, though it is still expensive. For the average person, bread remains central. Along with pottage, a thick stew of grains and vegetables, meat is eaten more frequently than in the medieval past, especially pork, beef, and mutton. Salted fish continues to be important, particularly on religious fasting days. In towns, markets supply cheese, butter, eggs, fruits, and nuts. Wealthy households indulge in extravagant feasts, roasted game birds, exotic spices like cinnamon and nutmeg, marzipan shaped into decorative sculptures, and wine imported from abroad. Coffee and tea begin to make appearances in Europe during this century, though at first they are rare luxuries. By the end of the 1600s, coffeehouses are springing up in cities like London, Paris, and Vienna, becoming centers for conversation, politics, and trade. Work and occupations. Agriculture still dominates life for the majority. Farmers plow, sow, and harvest with methods not far removed from medieval times, but improvements in tools and crop rotation are beginning to appear. The agricultural revolution is on the horizon. In towns, crafts remain vital. Blacksmiths, coopers, shoemakers, and tailors are common. But new industries are rising: shipbuilding for expanding navies, printing presses for books and pamphlets, and textile workshops for the growing demand in clothing. Guilds continue to regulate trades, though capitalism and free markets are beginning to shift how business is done. Children of poor families work alongside parents from an early age, but in wealthier households, education is gaining importance. Literacy rates are rising, especially among the middle classes, thanks to the spread of printed books. Boys may study Latin, arithmetic, and religion. Some girls of wealthy families are taught to read, write, or play music, though most are still expected to focus on domestic roles. Religion and belief. If the 15th century was defined by the churches and challenged authority, the 17th century is an age of religious conflict. The Protestant Reformation of the previous century has left Europe divided. Wars of religion erupt, Catholics against Protestants, different Protestant sects against one another. The 30 Years' War devastates Central Europe, leaving entire regions depopulated. In England, Puritans challenged the authority of the monarchy and the Anglican Church, leading to the English Civil War. Across Europe, faith remains central to daily life. Church services, prayers, and rituals structure existence, but now religion is also a source of bitter conflict, shaping politics, identity, and community. Superstitions remain widespread. People still believe in witches, and witch trials occur throughout the century. Amulets, charms, and folk remedies are used alongside prayer to heal the sick or protect against misfortune. Yet at the same time, a new spirit of inquiry is emerging, what we now call the scientific revolution. Galileo studies the stars, Newton develops his laws of motion, and physicians begin to challenge medieval medical theories. Leisure and entertainment for ordinary people. Leisure is simple. Music, dancing, storytelling, and games provide entertainment. In towns, theater becomes hugely popular. In England, the plays of Shakespeare, Ben Jonson, and later Restoration comedies draw crowds from all walks of life. Public executions and bear baiting also remain brutal but common forms of entertainment. Festivals, fairs, and seasonal celebrations bring communities together with food, drink, and games. In noble courts, entertainment is far more elaborate: masks, operas, and grand banquets filled with spectacle and symbolism. Health and medicine. Medical knowledge is still limited, though changing. Bloodletting and humoral theory remain standard, but physicians now consult anatomy books and begin experimenting with new treatments. Herbal remedies are still common, and apothecaries sell mixtures of plants, minerals, and even exotic substances. Like powdered mummies, yes, actual ground-up mummies from Egypt were sold as medicine in this period. Life expectancy is still short, though slowly improving. Plagues continue to strike. London suffers its Great Plague in 1665, killing tens of thousands. But gradually, sanitation improves in cities, and the seeds of modern public health are being planted. The shadow of change. The 17th century is an age of contradictions. On the one hand, life for most people still revolves around farming, religion, and community traditions, much as it had for centuries. On the other hand, trade, science, and politics are beginning to reshape daily existence. Exotic goods reach ordinary markets. Books and pamphlets spread ideas faster than ever before. Coffeehouses buzz with conversation, and people debate philosophy, commerce, and science in ways their grandparents never imagined. The world is becoming bigger, more connected, and more dangerous. Colonial expansion brings wealth, but also war and exploitation. Religious strife tears communities apart. Yet amid this turbulence, ordinary people continue their daily routines: baking bread, spinning wool, attending church, and gathering with neighbors. They live in a world on the edge of modernity, where tradition still rules but change is creeping. And the 17th century is both familiar and strange, a bridge between medieval life and the modern world we recognize today. In the next and final part, we will step into the 19th century, an age of steam engines, factories, social revolutions, and urban growth, when daily life transforms more rapidly than ever before. By the time we reach the 19th century, daily life has undergone transformations more dramatic than anything seen in the centuries before. In just a few generations, the world becomes louder, faster, dirtier, and more crowded, and at the same time, filled with opportunities and inventions that would have seemed like magic to people of the Middle Ages. This is the age of the Industrial Revolution. Steam engines roar across landscapes, railways connect distant towns, cities explode in size, and factories pour smoke into the skies. The 19th century is also the age of empire, of revolutions, of social reform, and of rising literacy and leisure. But what did all of this mean for the everyday person? Let's step into their shoes. Homes and living spaces. For many, home life in the 19th century is defined by whether you live in the countryside or in the booming cities. In rural villages, life still follows traditional patterns. Farmhouses are larger and sturdier than the cottages of earlier centuries, with stone or brick walls, tiled roofs, and separate rooms for cooking, sleeping, and storage. Furniture is more abundant: wooden beds with mattresses, chests of drawers, clocks, and sometimes even pianos in middle-class homes. But in cities, the picture is very different. Industrialization draws millions from the countryside into urban centers. Families cram into small apartments or tenement houses, often with poor ventilation and sanitation. In London, Paris, New York, and Manchester, whole neighborhoods consist of narrow alleys filled with overcrowded dwellings. Several families may share a single water pump or latrine. At the same time, the growing middle-class merchants, professionals, factory owners live in comfortable townhouses with parlors, dining rooms, and kitchens. By the late 19th century, even working-class families begin to afford small luxuries: oil lamps, iron stoves, curtains, and printed wallpaper. Food and meals. The 19th century diet reflects both abundance and inequality. For the poor, meals are still simple: bread, potatoes, porridge, and whatever cheap vegetables or scraps of meat are available. In industrial cities, families rely heavily on tea, bread, and margarine. Children often eat gruel or thin soups. Malnutrition is common among the working class, especially in the early part of the century, but improvements in farming, transportation, and trade gradually expand diets. Railways bring fresh produce from the countryside to city markets. Canning is invented, allowing food to be preserved and shipped long distances. Sugar, once a luxury, becomes widely available, leading to the popularity of jams, sweets, and cakes. Wealthier families enjoy roasts, puddings, fresh fruit, and imported goods like coffee, chocolate, and tropical fruits. Dinner becomes a formal event in middle and upper-class homes, with multiple courses, fine tableware, and strict etiquette. Clothing and fashion. The 19th century is one of the most fashionable eras in history, with styles shifting dramatically over its course. For men, the century begins with tailcoats, waistcoats, and breeches. By mid-century, the modern suit emerges, a matching jacket and trousers, worn with a waistcoat and tie. Top hats are symbols of respectability, while workers wear flat caps, sturdy boots, and simple wool or cotton garments. For women, fashion is far more elaborate. Early in the century, dresses with high waists and flowing skirts reflect neoclassical influences. By the 1850s, crinoline's huge cage-like structures worn under skirts create enormous silhouettes. Later, bustles push skirts backward, giving women distinctive hourglass shapes. Corsets are nearly universal, shaping the body to match fashionable ideals. Textiles become cheaper thanks to industrial production, meaning even working-class people can afford multiple sets of clothing. Laundries and dressmakers flourish in cities, and department stores like Harrods in London or Le Bon Marché in Paris begin to appear, offering ready-made goods. Work and occupations. Nothing transforms daily life in the 19th century more than work. For millions, the farm gives way to the factory. Men, women, and even children labor long hours in textile mills, coal mines, and steelworks. Conditions are harsh. Noise, smoke, and danger are constant companions. Child labor is common until reform laws gradually restricted in the later century. Yet, industrialization also creates new jobs: clerks, teachers, engineers, railway conductors, shopkeepers. The middle class grows rapidly, filling offices, schools, and shops rather than fields and workshops. In the countryside, many farmers adopt new machines, plows, threshers, reapers that increase productivity. But the rural population steadily declines as young people move to cities seeking work. For women, domestic service remains the most common occupation, with millions employed as maids, cooks, or nannies in wealthier households. But by the end of the century, women begin to enter teaching, nursing, and clerical work in growing numbers. Education and literacy. The 19th century sees a dramatic rise in education. Public schools expand, and many countries introduce compulsory education for children. Literacy rates climb steadily, fueled by the spread of cheap printed books, newspapers, and magazines. Children of working-class families may still leave school early to earn wages, but by the late 1800s, it becomes increasingly common for boys and sometimes girls to spend at least several years in school. For the middle and upper classes, education is a marker of status. Boys study Latin, mathematics, and history in grammar schools, while girls often learn music, drawing, and domestic skills. Universities expand, and scientific research grows in importance. Health and medicine. The 19th century is both one of the unhealthiest and one of the most groundbreaking eras in medical history. Industrial cities suffer from pollution, contaminated water, and overcrowding, leading to cholera outbreaks, tuberculosis, and high infant mortality. Life expectancy for urban workers can be shockingly low in the early century, but this is also the age of discovery. Vaccination against smallpox becomes widespread. Anesthesia revolutionizes surgery. Louis Pasteur and Robert Koch developed germ theory, changing the understanding of disease forever. Public health reforms bring cleaner water supplies, sewage systems, and regulations on housing. By the end of the century, mortality rates are falling, and life expectancy is rising. Religion and belief. Religion remains central to daily life, but new challenges arise. In Europe and America, churches continue to play a key role in community life, with Sunday worship, baptisms, weddings, and funerals marking life's milestones. But scientific discoveries such as Darwin's theory of evolution spark debates between faith and reason. At the same time, new religious movements emerge, from evangelical revivals to spiritualism and seances, reflecting both a hunger for meaning and the uncertainty of a rapidly changing world. Leisure and entertainment. For the first time, large numbers of people begin to have real leisure time. Laws gradually reduce working hours, and railways allow families to travel to the seaside or countryside for short holidays. Parks are built in cities, offering green spaces for recreation. Music halls, theaters, and opera houses entertain audiences. The novel becomes the dominant literary form, with authors like Charles Dickens, Jane Austen, and Mark Twain reaching vast readerships. Newspapers and magazines spread news and entertainment to millions. By the end of the century, new inventions like photography, bicycles, and even the earliest motion pictures change how people spend their free time. Sports, cricket, football, baseball grow into organized, professional pastimes, the shadow of inequality. Despite progress, the 19th century is not an easy age for everyone. The gap between rich and poor is immense. While the wealthy live in grand mansions with servants, the poor may suffer in dark, damp tenements. Child labor, dangerous working conditions, and poverty remain widespread until social reform movements push for change. At the same time, political revolutions, labor unions, and campaigns for women's rights begin to reshape societies. The everyday lives of ordinary people are increasingly connected to global movements for justice and equality. A century of transformation. The 19th century marks the true beginning of the modern world. From the factory floor to the parlor, from the crowded streets of industrial cities to the quiet fields of rural villages, daily life is transformed. People read newspapers over breakfast, ride trains to work, light lamps with gas or electricity, and communicate across continents with telegraphs. The rhythm of life is no longer dictated solely by the sun or the church bell, but by the whistle of the factory, the schedule of the railway, and the ticking of the clock. Time itself feels different, measured, organized, precise. And yet, in many ways, human life remains familiar. Families gather around the table for meals, children play in the streets. People tell stories, sing songs, fall in love, and worry about the future. The details have changed, but the essence of daily life, the search for survival, comfort, and meaning remains the same. From the smoky cottages of the 15th century to the bustling cities of the 19th. The history of daily life is a story of endurance, adaptation, and change. Each century brings new hardships and new wonders, shaping the world we live in today. And perhaps the most remarkable thing of all is this: if someone from 600 years ago could step into our modern homes, with their lights, running water, computers, and cars, they would be astonished. But if they looked closely at a family sharing a meal, at children laughing in the street, at neighbors helping each other, they might recognize something very familiar.